The pre-surgery room smelled of disinfectant and fear. I lay on the narrow bed, clutching the thin blanket as if it could protect me from what was coming. At 72 years old, I was about to undergo hip replacement surgery, and I was completely alone. But that's not entirely true, is it? I need to be honest if I'm going to tell this story properly. I wasn't completely alone. I had pushed away offers of help from 3 different church friends, too proud to admit I needed them. "Mrs. Patterson, do you have someone coming to be with you?" the nurse asked gently, her eyes scanning the empty chairs beside my bed. "My son he's trying to get here," I lied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "He lives in Chicago." The truth was more complicated than I wanted to admit. Michael had called 3 days ago, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice before he even spoke. "Mom, about the surgery," he'd started, and I heard papers rustling, a door closing. He was calling from a supply closet, I realized, again. "I want to. God, Mom, I really want to. But Brennan's threatening to fire half our department if this merger doesn't go through. I haven't slept in 48 hours. Jessica's already angry because I missed her sister's wedding for work. If I lose this job," his voice cracked. What he didn't say, what I learned later, was that they were 3 months behind on their mortgage, that Jessica had suffered 2 miscarriages in the past year, each one driving them further apart and deeper into debt from medical bills. But I didn't know any of that then. All I heard was another excuse, another reason why I didn't matter enough. "Of course, sweetheart," I'd whispered, swallowing my hurt. "Your career is important." Later, Michael would tell me he sat in that supply closet for 20 minutes after our call, sobbing into his hands. His assistant found him there and thought someone had died. Someone did, he'd told her, the mother who used to believe I could do no wrong. As they wheeled me into the operating room, I couldn't help but remember another hospital, another surgery, 35 years ago. Michael had been 8, and I'd been rushed in for emergency gallbladder surgery. He'd refused to leave my side, sleeping curled up in the uncomfortable visitor's chair. But here's what I didn't remember until much later. I'd been angry at him for being there. "You have school tomorrow," I'd snapped, still groggy from anesthesia. "This is exactly why I need you to be more independent." Even then, I was pushing him away, teaching him that needing people was weakness. The anesthesia mask descended, and my last conscious thought was a prayer, not just for the surgery to go well, but for the courage to admit my own role in the distance between us. Michael's perspective. 3 days before surgery, I stared at my phone. Mom's number still on the screen. My hands were shaking. From caffeine, exhaustion, or guilt, I couldn't tell anymore. "Brennan wants the merger reports by Monday," Jessica texted. "Also, I'm ovulating. Don't be late tonight." Our marriage had become a series of scheduled appointments. Fertility treatments, couples therapy we couldn't afford, stilted dinners where we talked about everything except what mattered. The second miscarriage had nearly broken us. Jessica blamed my stress, the long hours, the constant anxiety that lived in our house, like a third partner. She wasn't wrong, but what choice did I have? My college roommate was living in his parents' basement after his startup failed. My colleague Dave had been unemployed for 18 months after being restructured out. In this economy, you didn't just have a job, you clung to it like a life raft. I pulled up flight prices to Portland, $890 for a round trip with 2 days' notice, plus the lost wages, probably $2,000 after taxes. Hotel, rental car, meals. We were looking at $3,500 minimum. Jessica and I had won $200 in savings, total. I could ask Mom for help, but she'd made her position clear over the years. "Neither a borrower nor a lender be," she'd say, quoting Shakespeare whenever I'd hint at financial troubles. "Patterson, conference room, now." Brennan's voice cut through my spiral. I shoved my phone away and grabbed my laptop. Mom was strong. She'd understand. She always understood. She had to. Dorothy's perspective. Post-surgery, I woke to the sound of machines beeping and the murmur of voices. Pain radiated from my hip, sharp and insistent. The recovery room nurse, a woman about my age with kind eyes, checked my vitals. "There you are," she said warmly. "Surgery went perfectly. Dr. Chen says you're going to do great. Is there someone we should call?" I closed my eyes, tears leaking from the corners. "No, there's no one." She squeezed my shoulder gently. I could tell she'd heard those words too many times from patients my age. The next morning, they prepared me for discharge. The physical therapist, an energetic young woman named Jenny, went through the exercises I'd need to do at home. "You'll need help for the first few weeks," she explained. "Simple things like getting in and out of bed, preparing meals, bathing. Do you have someone staying with you?" "I'll manage," I said, attempting a smile. Jenny frowned. "Mrs. Patterson, you really shouldn't be alone. Hip replacement recovery is serious. One fall could set you back months." "I said I'll manage," I repeated more firmly. The discharge coordinator, clearly uncomfortable, had me sign a waiver acknowledging I was leaving against medical advice regarding home care. As I waited for the taxi I'd called, I overheard two nurses talking. "It breaks my heart," one said. "These elderly patients with families who can't be bothered. Her son lives in Chicago. That's what, a 2-hour flight. And he can't take a few days off. Some people don't deserve the parents they have," the other replied. I pretended not to hear, but their words echoed what I'd been trying not to think. The taxi driver who arrived was a middle-aged man with a gentle smile and kind eyes. His ID card read, Hassan Ahmad. He took one look at me struggling with my walker and immediately got out to help. "Please, let me assist you," he said, in accented English. "My mother, she had the same surgery last year. I know how difficult it is." As he helped me into the back seat, moving with practiced care, I couldn't help but think that this stranger was showing me more consideration than my own son. "You have someone at home to help you?" Hassan asked as we drove. "Yes," I lied again. I was getting good at it. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, and I could tell he didn't believe me. When we reached my small 2-story house in Oak Park, the one I'd scrimped and saved to buy in a good school district for Michael, Hassan insisted on helping me inside. "Please, is no problem," he said when I protested. "I cannot leave you to struggle alone." He helped me up the front steps, waited while I fumbled with my keys, and even carried my hospital bag inside. The house felt cold and empty, as if it knew I was vulnerable. "Where is your bedroom?" Hassan asked. "Upstairs," I admitted, looking at the staircase that suddenly seemed like Mount Everest. Hassan's face creased with concern. "You cannot climb stairs yet. Where can you sleep down here?" We ended up setting up a makeshift bedroom in my living room. Hassan moving furniture without complaint. He found my medication in the hospital bag and set it on the coffee table with a glass of water. "You need food," he declared, opening my refrigerator. It was nearly empty. I'd planned to shop after the surgery, thinking Michael would be here to help. "This is not good. You wait, I will return." "No, please, you've done enough." But he was already heading for the door. 30 minutes, I bring groceries." True to his word, Hassan returned with bags of easy-to-prepare foods, soup, bread, fruit, and even some prepared meals from what looked like his own kitchen. "My wife," she insisted, he said, unpacking containers. "She says no one should eat hospital food and then come home to empty fridge." I tried to pay him for everything, but he refused. "You pay only taxi fare. The rest, it is, how you say, paying forward?" Someone helped my mother. Now I help you. After he left, I sat in my makeshift bed, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers and the absence of family. I reached for my phone, hoping to see a message from Michael. Nothing. I called him. It went to voicemail. "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. The surgery went well. I'm home now. I know you're busy, but could you call when you get a chance? I love you." The first night was hell. Every movement sent shooting pains through my hip. Getting to the bathroom required military-level planning and execution. I'd inch my way up, using the walker, each step in agony, praying I wouldn't fall. By morning, I was exhausted, hurting, and desperately lonely. My neighbor, Maria Santos, found me the next day. She'd noticed newspapers piling up and used the spare key I'd given her years ago for emergencies. Dios mío, Mrs. Dorothy, what happened? She rushed to my side, taking in my pale face and obvious pain. I had surgery, I managed. Hip replacement. And you're alone? Where is Michael? Her voice carried the protective anger of a mother. He couldn't come. Work. Maria muttered something in Spanish that I was glad I couldn't understand. This is not right. You wait here. She returned an hour later with her teenage daughter, Sophia, arms full of supplies, more groceries, cleaning products, and a stack of magazines. Sophia will sit with you while I clean, Maria announced, and I make you proper food, not this. She gestured dismissively at the simple sandwich I'd managed to make. Maria, I can't ask you to, you don't ask, I offer, there is difference. And so began a routine I hadn't expected. Maria would come in the mornings before her shift at the restaurant, preparing meals I could easily reheat. Sophia would stop by after school, ostensibly to do homework, but really to keep me company. Mrs. P, you're like way cooler than my friends' grandmas, Sophia said one afternoon. Painting my nails because it will cheer you up. You actually listen when I talk about school drama. Well, your school drama is far more interesting than my soap operas, I told her, making her giggle. It was the first time I'd laughed since before the surgery. Michael finally called 3 days post-surgery. Mom, sorry, it's been crazy here. How did everything go? Fine, I said, not mentioning the pain, the fear, the nights I'd cried from loneliness. The surgery was successful. Great, great. I knew you'd be fine. You're tough as nails. Hey, listen, I have to run into a meeting, but I'm glad you're okay. We'll talk soon, yeah? Michael, wait, but he was gone. I stared at the phone, wondering when I'd become just another item on his to-do list, something to check off between meetings. Days turned into weeks. The physical therapy team that came to the house twice a week were wonderful, but they always asked the same uncomfortable question. Don't you have family to help with these exercises? My son lives in Chicago, became my standard response, as if distance alone explained his absence. Oh, that's tough, they'd say sympathetically. Does he visit on weekends? I'd change the subject. The truth was, Michael hadn't visited in over a year. Even before the surgery, our relationship had dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and birthday cards that arrived late. His wife, Jessica, had made it clear early in their marriage that dutiful visits to the in-laws weren't her thing. Your mother's house is so quaint, she'd said during their last visit, the word dripping with condescension. And this neighborhood, well, it's certainly authentic. What she meant was that my modest home and middle-class neighborhood didn't match the image she and Michael were cultivating in their Chicago high-rise. 6 weeks after surgery, I was finally able to climb stairs again. That's when I decided to tackle the attic, partly for something to do, and partly because the physical therapist said reaching and stretching would be good for me. Up there, among the Christmas decorations and old furniture, I found a box labeled Michael's School Years. Inside were report cards, art projects, and photos I'd forgotten about. There was the Mother's Day card he'd made in 2nd grade. My mom is the best because she works hard to take care of me and always has time for hugs. Always has time. I traced the crooked letters, remembering the little boy who'd presented it so proudly. When had I stopped having time? Or more accurately, when had he decided my time wasn't worth having? Deeper in the box, I found something that stopped my heart. An essay he'd written in high school titled, My Hero. It was about me, about how I'd worked double shifts at the diner after his father died, how I'd gone without new clothes so he could have the latest sneakers, how I'd helped him with homework even when I was exhausted. My mother taught me that success comes from hard work and sacrifice, he'd written. Someday, I want to be successful enough to take care of her the way she's taken care of me. I sat on the attic floor and sobbed. That evening, my phone rang. Michael again, but this time he didn't sound rushed. Mom, I've been thinking, maybe you should consider selling the house. It's probably too much for you now, especially after the surgery. I'm managing fine, I said carefully. But wouldn't it be easier in a senior community, somewhere with help available if you need it? Michael, I've lived in this house for 40 years. I raised you here. I know, but times change. That house must be worth a fortune now. You could sell it, move somewhere smaller, and have plenty left over for a comfortable retirement. I said, I'll think about it, Michael. After we hung up, I made a decision. It was time to update my will. The next morning, I called Patricia Winters, an estate attorney recommended by my friend at the senior center. Patricia was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who understood immediately what I wasn't saying. Family troubles, she asked gently, after I explained I wanted to make some changes. You could say that. I see it more often than you'd think. Children who assume inheritance is their birthright, regardless of their behavior. Let's make sure your wishes are crystal clear. We spent 3 hours going through everything. My house, my savings, my mother's jewelry, even my car. Patricia listened without judgment as I explained my thoughts on each item. I want to leave something to my son, I said. I'm not vindictive, but you want your estate to reflect the relationships that matter to you now, not just biological ties. Patricia finished. Exactly. As I left her office, I felt a strange mix of sadness and empowerment. I wasn't cutting Michael out entirely, but I was acknowledging a truth I'd been avoiding. Family isn't just about blood. The next few months passed in a blur of medical appointments. My hip was healing well, but during a routine follow-up, Dr. Chen frowned at something in my blood work. I'd like to run some additional tests, she said carefully. Your liver enzymes are elevated. It's probably nothing, but let's be thorough. It wasn't nothing. The diagnosis came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Liver cancer, stage 2, treatable but serious. We'll start with chemotherapy, Dr. Martinez explained. The good news is we caught it relatively early. The not so good news is that treatment will be challenging, especially living alone. I'll manage, I said, my standard response to everything these days. But managing chemotherapy alone was different from managing hip surgery recovery. The first treatment left me so violently ill, I couldn't make it to the bathroom in time. I lay on the bathroom floor, too weak to move, wondering if this was how it would end. Maria found me there the next morning. She'd been texting, and when I didn't respond, she used her key again. No more, she said firmly, helping me back to bed. You cannot do this alone. I will arrange help. Maria, I can't afford. Did I say anything about money? My cousin Rosa, she just retired from nursing. She needs something to do. You would be helping her by letting her help you. It was a lie, of course. Rosa didn't need something to do, but Maria understood that I needed to feel like I wasn't just taking, and so my support system grew. Rosa would come during the days after chemo. Maria and Sophia continued their visits. Hassan, who'd become my regular driver to treatments, often waited with me, sharing stories of his family still in Pakistan. You remind me of my mother, he said one day. She also was too proud to ask for help, but helping is how we show love, yes? The church ladies from the community center started a meal train without asking. Every evening someone would drop off a home-cooked meal. I'd gone to that church sporadically for years, never really connecting. Now these women I barely knew were showing up with casseroles and compassion. Michael, meanwhile, remained oblivious. Our calls had dwindled to once a month, always initiated by me, always brief. How are you feeling, Mom? He'd ask. But before I could answer honestly, he'd launch into stories about his work, his renovated condo, the vacation they were planning to Europe. I never told him about the cancer. What was the point? He was too busy to help with hip surgery. Cancer would just be an inconvenience. a disruption to his carefully curated life. One particularly bad day, after a treatment that left me weaker than usual, Sophia sat by my bed, reading to me from her history textbook. "This is boring," she declared. "Tell me a real story." So I did. I told her about growing up poor in rural Illinois, about meeting Michael's father at a dance, about the dreams we'd had before a drunk driver shattered them. I told her about raising Michael alone, the nights I'd gone to bed hungry so he could eat, the jobs I'd worked to pay for his college. "But he doesn't visit you," Sophia said, confused. "If my mom did all that for me, I'd never leave her alone." "People change, sweetheart. Sometimes they forget where they came from. That's sad," she said simply. Then, brightening, "But you have us now. We're your family, right?" "Right," I whispered, squeezing her hand. As winter approached, I knew I was running out of time. The treatments had stopped working. Dr. Martinez suggested hospice care, her eyes full of sympathy. "Is there anyone we should call? Family who should know?" "I'll handle it," I said. But I didn't, not right away. Instead, I spent my remaining good days setting things in order. I updated my will again with Patricia, this time adding video messages. I wrote letters to the people who'd become my real family. Finally, on a cold December morning, I called Michael. "Mom, it's early. Is everything okay?" "No, Michael, everything is not okay. I have cancer. The doctors say I have maybe a month, possibly 2. Silence. Then, "What? When? How long have you known?" 8 months. 8 months, and you're just telling me now. Mom, how could you not tell me something like this? When would I have told you, Michael? During one of our 5-minute calls, where you're always rushing to another meeting. Or maybe I should have texted it to you, since that's how you prefer to communicate. That's not fair, isn't it? You couldn't take 2 days off for my hip surgery. What would you have done about cancer? Sent flowers? "I'll come now," he said, panic creeping into his voice. "I'll catch the first flight out." "Why now, Michael? Because I'm dying? Because you've realized there's an estate to settle?" "Mom, please. You're my mother. Of course I care. I've been your mother for 45 years, but you've been too busy to notice for the last 15. He arrived the next day with Jessica, both of them suddenly attentive, in a way that felt like a performance. They checked into a hotel. "Mom, your house isn't really set up for guests, but visited daily. They brought expensive gifts I didn't need and couldn't use. We should have been here," Michael kept saying. "You should have told us." But his eyes kept drifting to my jewelry box, to the paintings on the walls, to all the things he was mentally cataloging. Jessica was worse. She'd walk through my house like she was already redecorating. Once, I caught her taking photos of my mother's china. "For memories," she said when I asked. The contrast was stark when my real family visited. Maria would climb into bed with me, holding me while I struggled with pain. Sophia read to me every day after school, currently working through Pride and Prejudice, because I'd mentioned loving it. Hassan brought his wife and children to meet me. "You are part of our story now," his wife Fatima said, presenting me with a beautiful shawl she'd knitted. "In Pakistan, we say the family you choose is as important as the family you're born with." The church ladies organized a rotation to ensure I was never alone at night. One evening, Michael and I were alone. Jessica was at the hotel, and Maria had stepped out to get dinner. "Mom," he started, "we need to talk about your will." "Do we?" "I just want to make sure everything is in order. The house, your accounts, Dad's life insurance policy you never cashed out. Everything is in order. But have you updated it recently? I mean, Jessica and I have been thinking it might be better to put things in a trust for tax purposes." "Michael," I interrupted, "do you remember when you were 10 and wanted that bike? The red mountain bike all your friends had. I worked extra shifts for 3 months to buy it. Missed your school play because I was working. You were so angry with me for not being there. The next morning, that bike was in the driveway with a note that said, 'I'm always there, even when you can't see me.' Do you remember what you said?" He shifted uncomfortably. "No. You said, 'I'd rather have you than the bike.'" You hugged me and said, that was better than any present. When did you change, Michael? When did things become more important than people? When did I become just another item on your to-do list? He couldn't meet my eyes. Life got complicated. Jessica and I have plans, goals, and I didn't fit into them. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me, if I didn't have this house, this estate you're so concerned about, would you be here? Of course. Don't lie to a dying woman, Michael. It's beneath you. He left shortly after, claiming Jessica needed him. But I knew the truth. He couldn't face his own reflection in my words. That night, I made my final decisions. I called Patricia and confirmed everything. The video messages were crucial. I wanted there to be no doubt about my state of mind or my intentions. 2 weeks later, on a surprisingly warm January morning, I woke knowing it wouldn't be much longer. Maria was there, as she'd been every night that week. Do you want me to call Michael? She asked gently. He's at the hotel. He'll come when he's ready. But it was Sophia who was there at the end, reading Jane Austen in her clear young voice. Maria held one hand. Hassan's wife, Fatima, held the other. The church ladies sang softly in the corner. These people who owed me nothing, but gave me everything. Michael arrived an hour after I passed. Sophia told me later that he'd stood in the doorway, watching strangers weep for his mother, looking lost and confused. The funeral was a study in contrasts. On one side sat Michael and Jessica, accepting condolences from people they'd never met. On the other, my chosen family grieved openly, sharing stories that Michael had never heard. She taught me to make pie crust, one church lady said. The secret was cold hands and a warm heart. She helped me with my college essays, Sophia added. Spent hours going over them, even when she was sick. She was learning Urdu, Hassan shared. She wanted to be able to speak to my mother when we bring her here. Michael looked increasingly uncomfortable with each story, each revelation of a life he'd missed. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. Patricia had called everyone named in the will, which confused Michael. Why are all these people here? He whispered to Jessica as the small conference room filled. Because they're all beneficiaries, Patricia said simply. Michael straightened, probably calculating how much smaller his share would be with others included. Patricia began. I, Dorothy Marie Patterson, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. First, I want to address my son, Michael Patterson. Michael leaned forward expectantly. To my son Michael, I leave the sum of $10,000 and the contents of Storage Unit 42B at Highway Storage. May you find peace with the past and courage for the future. The color drained from Michael's face. Jessica grabbed his arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging in. That's all? Michael stammered. There's also this letter, Patricia said, handing him an envelope. To be read privately. Patricia continued. To Maria Santos, who became the daughter I never had, I leave my house with the mortgage fully paid. Maria burst into tears, Sophia hugging her tightly. No, Senora Dorothy, this is too much. But her protests were drowned in tears of gratitude and grief. To Sophia Santos, I establish an education trust in the amount of $100,000 for college and graduate school. She kept an old woman company and reminded me that youth and wisdom can coexist beautifully. Sophia was sobbing now, unable to speak. To Hassan Ahmad, who showed me kindness when I was a stranger to him, I leave my car and $30,000 to bring his family from Pakistan. Hassan's shoulders shook as he wept openly. To Rosa Martinez, who pretended to need something to do so I could pretend I wasn't charity, I leave my mother's pearl necklace and $15,000. To the Ladies' Auxiliary of First Methodist Church, I leave my grandmother's China service for $12,000 and $10,000 for your food ministry. You fed my body and my soul. Patricia continued through the list. Every person who'd shown me kindness received something. Not just money or objects, but carefully chosen gifts that showed I'd paid attention to their lives. The remainder of my estate, approximately $180,000, is to be used to establish the Patterson Family Fund, providing support for elderly individuals facing medical crises alone. Michael Patterson and Maria Santos will serve as co-trustees. I looked at Maria, surprised. She seemed equally shocked. Michael shot to his feet. This is insane. I'm her son, her only blood relative. She wasn't in her right mind. The cancer had clearly affected her judgment. Patricia looked at him calmly. Your mother anticipated you might feel that way. She left this video message to be played in the event you contested the will. The screen on the wall flickered to life. There I was, thin but clear-eyed, sitting in my favorite chair. The date stamp showed it was recorded 3 weeks before my death. Hello, Michael. If you're watching this, it means you're questioning my final wishes. Let me be clear. I am of sound mind. Dr. Martinez has provided written documentation to that effect. You're probably angry. You probably think I'm being vindictive or that I let others manipulate me. The truth is much simpler and perhaps more painful. I'm giving my estate to the people who were my family when I needed one. For 15 years, you've been too busy for me. Too busy to visit, too busy to call, too busy to help when I was scared and alone. But when you heard I might have property to sell, suddenly you had time. When you thought there was an inheritance to claim, suddenly I mattered. The people in that room, Maria, Sophia, Hassan, Rosa, the church ladies, they gave me something worth more than money. They gave me their time, their presence, their love. You weren't there when I couldn't get to the bathroom after surgery. You weren't there when chemotherapy left me crying on the floor. You weren't there for the small victories or the large defeats, but they were. I'm not punishing you, Michael. I'm simply acknowledging reality. My estate goes to my family, the family that chose me when my biological family chose otherwise. I do love you. I've always loved you. That little boy who wouldn't leave my hospital bed still lives in my heart. But love doesn't mean rewarding neglect. In your letter, you'll find something else. I hope it helps you understand. Despite everything, I want you to find your way back to the person you used to be. Goodbye, my son. Be better. The screen went dark. The room was silent, except for soft crying from Maria and Sophia. Patricia cleared her throat. The will is ironclad. Your mother consulted with me multiple times over the past year, always of clear mind and purpose. Michael sank into his chair, Jessica hissing something in his ear. He wasn't listening. He was staring at the envelope in his hands. Later, Maria told me what happened next. Michael had gone to his rental car and opened the letter. Inside was a photo from his 8th birthday. Him blowing out candles while I watched. On the back, I'd written, "This is how I choose to remember us." Also in the envelope was every card he'd sent me over the last 15 years. All 7 of them. Each one signed simply, Michael, or sometimes M. No love, no personal messages, just signatures, proof of the minimum effort to maintain the illusion of a relationship. At the bottom of the stack was a rubber-banded bundle. Every card, letter, and email I'd sent him that had been returned or ignored. 15 years of trying to stay connected, all rejected. The final item was a medical bracelet from his birth. Tiny, faded, with baby boy Patterson, barely visible. A note was attached. I kept this for 45 years. You kept me in your life for 30. A year has passed since the will reading. The Dorothy Patterson Fund has helped 127 seniors in its first year. We provide transportation, home care, advocacy, and most importantly, presence. Michael serves as co-director with Mariah. He moved back to Portland permanently, lives in a small apartment near the old house. He drives for the fund 3 days a week. She'd be proud, Maria tells him one day, as they review the month's cases. She'd be annoyed we named it after her. He corrects. She hated attention. Jessica sends a donation every Christmas. She remarried. A teacher who doesn't work weekends. They're adopting. Your mom was right, she wrote in her last card. I did want a lifestyle Michael couldn't afford. But more than that, I wanted a partner who was present. I hope you both found peace. Sophia is at Northwestern, studying social work. She calls Michael Uncle Mike now, texts him about boys and classes, and the unfairness of cafeteria food. Hassan's mother teaches English at the Literacy Center now, in the same room where Dorothy volunteered. His youngest sister just graduated from nursing school. The church ladies still use Dorothy's china for their monthly teas. They've added a new tradition. Each meeting, they share stories of someone who helped them when they needed it most. And Michael, he's learning. He shows up now for the fund's clients, for Maria's family dinners, for the life his mother tried to show him in her final months. He's in therapy, unpacking years of mutual hurt and missed connections. I dream about her sometimes, he tells his therapist. She's young, I'm young. We're in the kitchen, making pie crust. Cold hands, warm heart, she says. And I realize that was her. Cold hands from working so hard, but warm heart. I just couldn't feel it through all that cold. I visit her grave every Sunday, not from obligation anymore, but from choice. I tell her about the fund, about the families we've helped, about the life that continues because she finally learned to let people in. We had another one this week, I tell her on a cold February morning. Elderly man, hip surgery, no family. Said he didn't need help. Maria bullied her way in anyway, just like with you. The headstone is simple. Her name, her dates, and the words she chose. She learned to let love in. Sometimes other people are there when I arrive. Former patients, literacy students, people I don't recognize who leave flowers and quiet thanks. Her chosen family still choosing her. I met someone, I tell her grave one day. A social worker at the hospital. She understands the work, understands why I do it. We're taking it slow. The wind rustles through the trees, and I almost hear her voice. Don't take it too slow. Time's the one thing you can't get back. She was right about so many things in the end. That family isn't just blood. That love shows up. That pride is a cold companion. That time is the only currency that matters. But mostly she was right about this. It's never too late to change the story. She did in her final months. And in doing so, she changed mine. Her legacy isn't the money she left, or even the fund we built. It's the moment when someone too proud to ask for help finally says yes. It's the neighbor who uses their spare key. It's the stranger who becomes family. It's the son who finally comes home, even if home is now a different place entirely. Thank you, I whisper to her grave, for letting me fail, for letting me find my way back, for showing me that love doesn't end when we get it wrong. As I walk back to my car, I see Hussein pulling up with an elderly client. He waves, calls out, "Michael, this is Mrs. Chen. Hip surgery next week. She says she doesn't need help." I smile, hearing my mother's voice in my head. The ones who say they don't need help need it most. "Let me introduce you to Maria," I say to Mrs. Chen. Fair warning, she doesn't take no for an answer. Mrs. Chen bristles. "I've been independent for 78 years. So was my mother," I interrupt gently. Right up until she wasn't. As we walk toward the fund's office, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the window. For the first time, I see my mother in my face, not just the stubborn jaw or the proud eyes, but the slowly learning heart. It took her death to teach us both how to live. But perhaps that's the most important legacy of all, that our stories don't end with our mistakes. In the end, Dorothy Patterson got exactly what she wanted, a family that chose her, a son who found his way home, and the knowledge that no one else would have to face their fears alone. 6 months later, the fund holds its first annual gala. We've helped over 200 seniors, raised enough to hire full-time staff, partnered with 3 hospitals. Michael stands at the podium, looking at the crowd of donors, volunteers, and families they've helped. "My mother used to say that time was the only currency that matters," he begins. She was right. But she was wrong about something else. She thought needing people made you weak. The truth is, needing people makes you human. And letting them help? That makes you family. He raises his glass, To Dorothy Patterson, who taught us that it's never too late to change your story, and to all of you who prove every day that love shows up. The room erupts in applause. At the table in front, Maria wipes away tears. Hassan's mother nods approvingly. Sophia, home from college, films it all for the families who couldn't attend. And perhaps, just perhaps, Dorothy is there too. In the lives changed, the connections made, the family that extends far beyond blood or obligation. Because in the end, that's what love does. It shows up, it stays, it grows, even when we think we've lost it forever, especially then. The end.